We're going to investigate 20 simple study actions that result in better grades today, as Ryan just mentioned. Our interest in student success began with our own struggles in college many years ago. The difficulties we faced were all the information, managing our time, studying for exams, and for me, at least, was approaching mathematics. I don't know about you, John, because you were a math teacher.
And approaching mathematics was always a challenge because it was in college, it became more about understanding rather than just finding the answer.
Mm-hmm. Over our years at North Idaho College, we saw our students face the exact same challenges. And one day when one of my introductory psychology students went from D's and F's to A's in a week, I asked him what he did differently. And he said, "We just covered the topic of memory and I saw what I was doing wrong." Well, this sent me to the library to research memory, and it turns out that the principles of memory can be applied directly to the study process. They shouldn't be a surprise, but it was to me. And it resulted in a 25-year odyssey into interacting with the memory principles and putting together a plan for total success for students at any level, in any course, delivered in any format. It all begins with the decision to take action, and the actions being, according to the way our memory system works, end up into becoming successful habits. Even Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is not an act, but a habit." The habits change our attitudes towards ourselves, towards school, towards our future career, towards what we can accomplish. We've gotten comments like, "This course changed my life. I don't feel like I'm studying. I still get A's, but I'm studying in half the time." It's actually a miracle. Understanding is the greatest miracle of all. Listening is the foundation of study. Listening means I have a receptive mind that's willing and open to learn. I've abandoned all my prior assumptions, abandoned all my judgment as I listen in class with intent and purpose. This requires undistracted attention. With listening, I'm getting my questions answered that I bring to class. Well, taking notes in class becomes a problem then. I don't know about you, but I always took notes in class and it interfered in my being able to listen. Taking notes in class can be replaced best by previewing or looking ahead and launching the learning process by coming to a situation prepared, knowing what it is I'm going to be taking in. When I preview, look ahead of time, I have questions that need to be answered. There's things I don't understand. It's brand new material, and being in class or reading will fill in those blanks. There's motivation to listen. I have a foundation for understanding when I preview, which is the same foundation I expected to be building when I was taking notes, but really never could accomplish.
And we find out that listening is not something just to hear, but as learning, it's a whole to listen and learn to listen brings understanding.
Mm-hmm. And this is assisted by making a chapter map. This is simply a layout of what will be learned. And it can take multiple forms. This is just one example. If I'm going to be reading a chapter, for example, a chapter on memory in a psychology textbook, I can lay out the headings and the subheadings and just write in the bolded or italicized words just as landmarks. Then when I'm going to class or when I'm reading the textbook, I have a place for all the information to fit, and it's put away the very first time I encounter it. One of the major principles of memory is we remember things the way we first see them or hear them. This allows me to not bring in information that is put in the wrong place. It avoids confusion. Chapter map is best made on a single piece of paper because every time we look at a brand new piece of paper, our memory system resets and we encode that one piece of paper as a unit. There are 20 specific study actions based on the principles of learning and memory. Memory works like an organized filing cabinet. Just like a filing cabinet is organized by topic and all pertinent information is stored within a specific place, memory only stores information that has a base in our previous experience. If it doesn't have a place to fit, it gets thrown away as junk mail. You go to the post office and you throw away everything that you don't need to take home. This organized mental structure ensures retention of the information in a form in which it is not considered discard. It's not considered rubbish. It's the way our memory system works. There are 11 study actions that develop clarity and distinctiveness for content that is required for memory. This works for any course delivered in any format. The first two we've already seen, focusing attention purposefully and previewing. The others each are based on principles of memory that have been discovered in the last 50 years and result in a comprehensive way of putting together any new information into a form that we can retain. Memory also works like a stomach, because just like a stomach requires time to digest and assimilate food, our memory system requires time to process memories. It takes at least 2 days, between 2 days and 2 weeks precisely, to process a concept. This explains why cramming doesn't work. Now, going through college, I always realized that cramming didn't work. People always told me so, but I didn't understand why. This is why it doesn't work. There are 4 study actions that apply to timing our study. We do our homework immediately, avoid decay. If we go to an 8 o'clock class, by the time we get to our homework at 8 p.m., a lot of events have gone on that have interfered with our learning new material that has not had a place to fit yet. So when we read and review immediately after class, or in math, do our homework immediately after class, there's no chance for decay. We work with one idea at a time and keep it short to respect our attention span and to group the information together as a unit and package it, so to speak. We review organized information every day, which is something in every class every day. And this saves our life over Thanksgiving break and spring break and in courses that only meet once or twice a week, over weekends, especially in courses with which we have little background, because without a context, things do not stick. When we have a context developed, any information and all information will stick to it. Sleep is required for memory. No sleep, no memory. It's just that simple. Anything we learn new, not just academics, but anything we learn new, it requires sleep, REM sleep, in order to process. Finally, memory works like a house. Just as we store the items that we have for a long time deeply in our home, we store information deeply the longest. So we have deep learning. We call deep learning overlearning. It's one term for it. Once we understand it, we keep working with it. It's formed by the last 5 study actions. We're all hands-on learners. We remember what we develop ourselves. And self-testing is a perfect way to ensure that we remember information accurately. In math, first thing we do in our homework is the same problem that our instructor did in class. We do our chapter review. We take a practice exam before we go to a final exam, like a final exam, an exam in class. We correct our returned exams. The point being, we make sure that the information we have in our memory is accurate. The best way is through testing, as we'll see. Testing is the pinnacle of learning because it is the highest level of mental concentration. It consolidates memories for the long term by correcting our errors as we go, as we self-test. So what we take with us, what we have permanently, is something that's completely accurate. We know more after testing than before we test. So let's do it more frequently. If you ever wanted to have an exam get it graded by the teacher, get it back, get the correct answers, and then take the same exam again for credit? Of course we do. Well, we can do this at home. This is self-testing. This is the final dress rehearsal before an exam. More about that later. We mentioned math earlier as being a challenge, so let's look at it. There's a special chapter in Study Sense devoted to studying mathematics for the reasons we mentioned before. One of the challenges that we have in understanding mathematics in our culture is, first of all, the math myth, which refers to the idea that some people are naturally mathematical and some aren't. Well, this is not true. It exists because we focus on getting the right answer rather than understanding. We merely perform math procedures rather than being required to explain why we did what we did. And we always have that time hanging over our head, can you do it quickly? So we get this idea that if you can't do things quickly, you don't really know math very well. And that's absolutely untrue. So with math, you put this cultural myth together with the unfamiliar symbols, the new procedures, expressing concepts on paper, which is always a challenge, learning how to work through to a solution and showing our work, and you have a package of obstacles. At least they appear to be obstacles. These can be remedied by showing our work in math in a regular, organized, predictable format.
This is a very effective way for students to show their work. And in showing their work, make sure that they have put together the process, the reasoning process that will bring them to the correct solution of the problem. So the problem, stating the problem is so important, defining what we're trying to find, and then in the work, do the operations, like in this case, it's a simple algebra equation, but finding the x, what we don't know, and that's what algebra is about, is an operation that involves for arithmetic of operations. And then stating the reason why we could want to do each one of these operations. And then at the end, make sure we clearly state what the unknown is. And then how many of us really consider that checking the answer is an important part of showing the work, and show that for showing that you really understand the whole process of solving the problem.
It allows me to identify what I don't understand, helps me generate questions, can figure out what I don't know, work with only one step at a time, and ensures that I understand my answers so it transfers to other problems and to other tests. So math is no longer a mystery. I'm going to give you an example. 2 weeks ago in Costco, a young man came up to us who worked there, and he saw John and he said, "My math teacher, your course saved my life."
And I asked Clint, what about it was saved your life? What happened? He said, when I decided to listen and write out the step-by-step process for solving the problem, everything seemed to become so obvious and so easy, and it became doable. I actually began to appreciate and enjoy being in math class, and I was no longer afraid of taking the math test.
Yeah.
Because I had a way now of making sure I understood what the concepts in math were about.
Well, this is all in Study Sense. All the principles of learning and memory applied to study directly are found here. There's 10 chapters. The 10 chapters fit into any semester or quarter format. Every chapter includes applications to online learning, to homeschool situations, to any form of learning that is not in class. There's discussion questions and assignments after every section. There's special sections that have ancillary materials that impact student success. A big section is on sleep, because sleep cycles are critical to to encoding material that for memory. There's differences between high school and college. Studying for different types of courses, section on how to listen, a section on effective time management, and a very helpful section on how to read a textbook once and remember 100%. This is putting several memory principles together and coming up with a tried and true way to cut down the time that we usually spend rereading information. There's templates for successful academic communication. One is studying for and writing a successful essay exam, even if we have never had a college composition class. How to show our work in math with the work reason format. The standards for college quality work, which refers to the format or the way things look on paper that we turn in. College quality is something like simply spacing between the lines, or having 1 to 1 1/4 inch margins and not being block style. Things like this are listed. 7-step study plan for mathematics is included, and a 7-step study plan that you have sent to you ahead of this webinar.
It can be applied to any subject.
Any subject at all.
Any subject at all. All the principles are the same for any course that we're taking. And to find this out, try it.
Try it. Yeah. We establish a context by previewing the material. We fill in the details by working with only one idea at a time. We put it in order from ourselves. We organize the information. We refine our understanding by reviewing daily. We check for accuracy by self-testing. And then we have that final dress rehearsal, like a dress rehearsal for a senior play, before we actually go into the exam. So we've set a timer. We go through exactly the same procedures and just pretend we're in the test. We don't check our answers until we're completely done. And this provides an experience that reduces our test anxiety massively. It reduces math anxiety. You put this together with the work reason format and it eliminates math anxiety because we know what we're going to be confronting and we practice doing it ahead of time. Complete mastery is developed through correcting returned exams. So we always are encoding the correct information. Now, teachers, tutors, and advisors all can benefit from understanding the principles of how students learn. I know for me, it totally changed the way that I organized my courses, how I paced my information, how I tested.
And to help students in math, I structured the course exactly according to the 7-step study plan we did. First thing we talked about in the morning was previewing. How did previewing going the night before?
Funny,
and so on.
Funny things would happen in my class because some students had both John and myself the same semester, or the one semester and then the next. And I had a couple of students say in class, "Oh, now I know why John did what he did in math. It's because it follows the memory principles we're learning in psychology." It was kind of fun.
So it works for any course.
Works for any course. Tutors
True for every.
Find that this helps them define their role and shows them why they can't pick up a pencil. Coaching the students rather than demonstrating for students how to do it is much more effective because when you coach students, they're doing it themselves. The student has to do it him or herself.
And tutoring, being a math tutor, gives us a real practical way of helping students be able to write down their process of solving the problem. And it then becomes a very doable experience for them. And as a tutor, it gives us an organization that we can help students with to learn.
Yeah, and it's regular. Advisors benefit because it helps in our coaching the people that we're assisting in the process. Okay, well, that's what we have for you. And here we are. There's our Facebook link and we have our information. And Ryan, we'd like to leave it up to you to please let us know what questions we can answer.
Outstanding. One of the questions, how would you modify these steps to inspire action with high school students? Same principles, or how would you modify it?
Well, they would be the same principles, and at any level, you could use it at any level. If I had high school students do the 7-step study plan in exactly the same way and come back with raving reviews. It's something that applies to any level, high school, college. I even have one friend of mine who's a first grade teacher, and she uses this with her first graders. So we know from experience, the people that we know have tried this at all levels. It does work the same way.
And
and since our practice session, I've used it with my kindergartner as well. So homeschooling has definitely taught me this is very beneficial for homeschooling during pandemic times.
One thing about with homeschooling, you bring that up, Bob, Ryan, that with homeschooling, understanding how it works and understanding sleep cycles and understanding the whole pacing helps you develop a homeschool routine that's effective. Timing is critical. We tend to think that study can be thrown in at any time and sleep can be thrown in at any time. And there's a certain order working with the way our body functions that is optimal.
And when we give ourselves to this, we find out we don't necessarily have to be experts in the courses that we're helping our children with who are having to study at home, because you have a way to show them what will help them, an organization that will give them hope, very much hope, help them to practice test and then take the test. It's amazing what happens.
How will the work reason format for math help me get better grades?
Well, as you go through that, because getting better grades has a lot to do with it, being able to end up with the correct answer and being able to show your work and write it out in a step-by-step format gives us the confidence that we understand. And of course, understanding is also the basis for all learning. And so this helps you to be sure that you are ready and prepared to go in to take a test, and you're not afraid of it.
This is from a Facebook Live viewer. How will this book help me structure my class?
Well, the way it helped me was that I realized the length of my students' attention span, first of all. And I realized that in my class, I had to swap things up. About every 5 minutes, I had to change modalities. I had to change from the overhead projector to a video clip to a moving, and help me move my personal movement in class was according to respecting my students' attention span. Another thing that I learned from this was the frequency with which I test. I gave my tests every 2 weeks. It takes between 2 days and 2 weeks to process a concept. I also scheduled my tests on a Monday to give them the weekend to study, because it takes at least 2 days to process information. So it changed my testing schedule, it changed my pacing schedule, it changed how long I spent on one topic before I moved to the next. The way that I presented in class was in terms of grouping. I also allowed my students to preview by providing them a lecture outline, an outline of what I was going to cover on the computer, on my website before class, so they could bring it to class for a frame of reference. Small things like this were assisted, and each teacher will find different ways to use it, because the whole point is any way we use these principles will work. And any thing we do that doesn't follow them, like cramming, won't. So once we're armed and dangerous, but armed with these principles, we can proceed and develop our own applications.
And we can structure the class exactly the way the 7-step study plan is put together. And in my math classes, it would be we talk about the preview, and then we would begin to actually go through the problems that they were experiencing. And within that, because it is a work reason, we would then also have brief moments where we could discuss the concepts that were involved and how they are applied in solving the particular math problem we're solving. So going through it exactly the way we expect and have learned to see helps students learn and helped us learn is very, very important. And then taking the practice test and going through it with them after they have already done it, gone through it and found out whatever challenges that they had in doing the practice test, and going through that prepared them for the test coming up. It was a very useful way to do things.
What we found, both of us found, that in modeling these through our classes, our students would come to us 2 or 3 semesters later, a couple of people years later, we run into them on the street telling us how our modeling what it did in class transferred to all their other courses, and they found themselves in productive study habits based on the way our courses were put together.
It's really inspiring listening to you talk. The impact the two of you have made on students' lives is incredible. So that's great to hear. Do you have time for one more question? I know we're nearing the bottom of the hour here. If you could explain a little more about creating a chapter map, how one goes about that.
Okay, we created a chapter map for reading. If I'm going to look ahead at the chapter, I'm going to flip through. It might take me 30 seconds to flip through and see how many headings there are. Oh, there's 6 subheadings in chapter 5, and I make 6 columns. At the top of the column, I write the title of the heading, and then I look at the subsections, which most textbooks are broken into, and I break those down with horizontals. And then it creates little pockets, and each pocket is going to be a particular idea. Hey, that's what the author put together when they wrote the book. So now I, as the reader, I am encoding the same way the author as the writer wrote it. So his or her information is being imparted to me as a unit within that box.
And in math, we add the formulas and the concepts in math that are going to come up within that chapter. And it's very important to add those so that you can see, oh, here's the structure of the whole chapter that we're going to go through the next day.
And when you're looking through, especially in math, there's going to be symbols and procedures you're not familiar with. You haven't been to class yet, but that automatically gives, it's a vacuum and a question. And when you're in class or when you are going through the book, you're going to be absorbing automatically the answer to those questions. It sets you up to actually learn in class. So being in class is learning when you come prepared, previewed. And this is what people typically mean, teachers mean by coming to class prepared. It means you're ready with your questions. Most of the time, I know in school, I didn't realize how to do that. But a chapter map or some kind of an overview ahead of time prepares me to be in class.
Really good advice. Thank you for your time today, John and Kristina. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I do have a final note. We're hosting another exciting webinar on March 4th titled Don't Get Duped Online, the Power of Mindful Communication in Troubling Times. I encourage you to visit kendallhunt.com/events to reserve your seat for this free webinar. In the coming days, you'll receive a copy of this recording, a 7-step study plan handout that John and Kristina have created, and contact information for our panelists. They're happy to answer any questions you have via email. So thanks again, John and Kristina. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you for registering and attending this webinar, and I hope everyone has a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you.